Hey, I'm Hollis.
And I'm Kelly. We're in session 2 of our series, Rooted. In this series, we're exploring a few key moments from Jesus' life and teachings and how they might help us grow.
And speaking of growing, let's pause for a fun botany fact, shall we?
We shall.
All right. If you had to guess what the largest organism ever to live on Earth is, what would you assume? A whale? A dinosaur? That giant shark you saw on Shark Week, maybe?
You might even think it's one of California's redwood trees, the ones that are so enormous you can drive your car right through one of their trunks. But this would still be the wrong answer.
It would. If you live in Colorado, you should know this, I'm pretty sure. The award for largest living organism isn't the redwood trees, the blue whale, or anything you'd see on Jurassic Park.
Nope.
It's actually a single grove of aspen trees, and it actually is in Utah.
Above ground, aspen groves look like clusters of individual trees, but they're really all growing out of one root system. This particular grove is one tree with 40,000 genetically identical trunks. When a trunk dies or there's new access to light, the tree starts growing a new aspen from its roots, and the root structure shares nutrients from the soil with other trees throughout the grove. They all may look like that they're different from each other, but they're all genetically the same.
Yeah. Aspens will keep growing when the conditions are right, expanding into the space around the grove. If you've ever planted them at your house, you'll see them grow all over the place.
Yep.
But sadly, the aspen groves in this region aren't expanding, they're dying. And the super plant, even with the ability to grow to enormous sizes with roots strong and powerful enough to sustain all of that life, is dying because something in the environment is off balance.
We've all had unbalanced moments, a little like the giant aspen grove. We've all been in situations where it seems like everything should be fine. We're doing our part, trying to take care of ourselves and our responsibilities, but things just aren't working out the way we thought that they would.
And so today, we're going to look at a story from Jesus' ministry. But we're not going to focus so much on Jesus himself this time. Instead, we'll focus on his followers, people who thought they had everything under control and were doing everything the way that it should be done.
Leading up to this moment, this group of Jesus' followers had been sent out by Jesus to tell their friends and their neighbors about him all on their own. They were tasked with great responsibility and surely felt like they had this thing figured out. But then, after they had all come back together from their separate travels, this happened.
The next day, when they came down from the mountain, a large crowd met him. A man in the crowd called out, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child." A spirit seizes him and he suddenly screams. It throws him into convulsions so that he foams at the mouth, and it scarcely ever leaves him and is destroying him. I begged your disciples to drive it out, but they could not. That comes from Luke chapter 9, verse 37 through 40.
Right before this happened, the same disciples this desperate father was talking about were out healing the sick and telling everyone about Jesus. Things had been going very well for them, but suddenly they met an obstacle they couldn't overcome. I wonder if the disciples felt disoriented, knocked a bit off balance by their powerlessness at this moment.
In other places in the Bible, we catch more of the story to fill in the gaps around why the disciples struggled to cast out this demon. Jesus told them they lacked the faith and closeness to God necessary to do what they were trying to do.
And like a plant lacking key nutrients in the soil around them, the disciples were told they were lacking an element in their relationship with God that would have allowed them to thrive. But the disciples were with Jesus every single day. How could their faith possibly fail to thrive? This was the kind of breaking news from Jesus these disciples certainly would not have been prepared to hear. It just didn't seem to fit with who they were and what they had been doing.
Yeah. So Jesus came down from a mountain where he had been spending time connecting with God. When he arrived, this father cried out to him in desperation, and Jesus healed his son.
And then Jesus shifted the entire vibe of this moment by warning the disciples he would soon be arrested. What? If the disciples weren't feeling disoriented by their encounter with this Father or Jesus' message about their faith, they definitely were now. In light of this update from Jesus, the disciples were confused and concerned, but also thrown into a debate that was 100% not the point of what Jesus had just told them.
Yeah, this is how the Gospel of Luke describes what happened. An argument started among the disciples as to which of them would be the greatest. Jesus, knowing their thoughts, took a little child and had him stand beside him. Then he said to them, "Whoever welcomes this child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. For it is the one who is least among you all who is the greatest."
"Master," said John, "we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he is not one of us." "Do not stop him," Jesus said, "for whoever is not against you is for you." That's from Luke 9.
The disciples essentially had the same incorrect argument twice in this exchange with Jesus.
Yep.
They were thrown off by their recent failure and the update from Jesus that he would soon be taken away from them by the authorities. So they revealed their insecurities twice by trying to get Jesus to confirm their status as the best of the best.
Yep. Jesus was patient, though, with his disciples because he would have to be patient with any of us who were in their situation. Being in the presence of tremendous power and feeling control in a situation like that can quickly throw any of us off and cause us to forget what really matters.
These disciples assumed being close to Jesus gave them power and privilege. But Jesus reminded them it's not about that. Jesus' mission wasn't and still isn't contained in some sort of hierarchical power structure.
Being close to Jesus is an incredible gift. A gift that comes with wisdom and insight, access, and purpose. But that gift was never meant to be exclusive or just for Jesus' insiders.
Remember the Aspen Grove? Scientists have a few different ideas about what is threatening the trees and their health. One popular theory is that the Aspen Grove is struggling because as trees grow taller and taller within the grove, the tallest trees must work harder to pull nutrients from the soil to reach all of their branches. In their efforts to preserve their own lives, the taller trees are actually starving the smaller ones, effectively killing the entire grove.
Fear often drives us to a place of self-preservation. If we're afraid that resources might be limited, instead of sharing what's available, we store up as much as we can for ourselves and those closest to us.
Yeah, we saw that all during 2020, right?
Yes.
This is how the disciples reacted to the disorienting feeling of failure and the message that Jesus wouldn't be around forever. They panicked, and their panic turned them inward. It caused them to try and protect the access and connection with Jesus they had built instead of sharing it with those around them.
The larger aspen trees may not have the conscious ability to limit their intake for the good of the grove, but we do. Look at this verse from Psalm 27. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is a stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?"
So there's a lot we could talk about here because Jesus' message to his disciples is an important one. But I'd actually like to zoom out a little bit. Rather than focusing on this specific teaching moment by Jesus, I want to point out a bigger picture. You see, there were actually a lot of moments like this between Jesus and his disciples. Over and over again, you see the disciples get something wrong, and Jesus helped them get it right.
And this dynamic lives in the core of following Jesus and growing spiritually. It's the practice of listening to and learning from Jesus, and then changing as a result.
Yeah, that's good. The disciples were feeling confident, at least for a while, in their own position, power, and knowledge. But Jesus had to remind them that they still had more growing to do. And if they wanted to grow, they needed to be humble, open, and inquisitive, like a child.
And a childlike curiosity, it pushes us to be constantly growing our own perspective of the world and who God is. The bigger our view of God is, the less likely we are to assume we are the only ones who are right.
the less likely we are to see God as a power to be wielded for our own good.
And the more inclined we will be to learn from God and from others, rather than defend what we think is right.
So if you want a faith that's deeply rooted, strong, and flourishing, remember this: we keep growing when we keep learning.